Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. In today's episode, we'll hear from Variety's Brian Steinberg on the triple header of Upfront presentations that kicked off TV's marathon week of wooing Madison Avenue. That was a clip from NBCUniversal's presentation on Monday that you heard in the cold open. Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang of the Los Culturistas podcast did a funny musical number with a spin on the pop hit APT as buy ads on NBC. And we'll also hear from Liz Jenkins, NBC Universal Entertainment's chief business officer, from her recent remarks at the Series Fest event in Denver. She addressed risk-taking in the time of disruption in an interview with NPR's John Horn. But before we get to all that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. Demi Moore wore polka dots and talked about the dangers of AI as the Cannes Film Festival opened with lots of glitz and glamour on the Côte d'Azur. Guillermo del Toro dazzled the Cannes crowd on day one with his screening celebrating the 20th anniversary of Pan's Labyrinth, his fantasy film that took the Croisette by storm in 2006. ABC has unveiled its fall lineup in advance of Disney's Upfront presentation later today. High Potential is holding for mid-season for a change. ABC has a lot of faith in its freshman drama R.J. Decker, which was renewed for season 2. And Scrubs, the comedy reboot that just arrived in March, will be coming back quickly with fresh episodes in the fall. Also coming back is Don Francisco. He will host a new talk show for NBCUniversal. Don Francisco hosted Sábado Gigante for Univision for more than 50 years before that show ended its run in 2015. NBCUniversal has also struck a deal with ESPN to grab the Spanish-language TV rights to the Valentine's Day Super Bowl set for February 14th, 2027 from SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. Go Bills. Paramount is continuing to get creative in mining its archives. A stage version of the Paranormal Activity franchise will land on Broadway in August. It will be directed by Felix Barrett, and Jason Blum is one of the producers, of course. R.I.P. to film critic Rex Reed. He was quite a character. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. And now it's time for conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. Brian Steinberg, Variety's senior television editor, joins us to translate what the platforms pitched from the stage on Monday and what all of that says about the state of their business. As Steinberg reported in an Upfronts curtain raiser story last month, this year's presentations are not so much about TV this time around. Brian Steinberg joining me from aboard the Amazon Prime Video bus to the after party after the Beacon Theater presentation. Please tell me, Brian, somebody played a little Allman Brothers in the preamble.
There was a lot of Casey Musgraves and Diplo and other artists were there on hand instead.
It's been a long day. You went to 3 presentations. Big picture, what did we learn today?
Everyone's trying to balance the need to be current on ad technology with trying to show just content that everyone likes. In years past, these were big presentations on comedies and dramas, and now the advertisers are very concerned about reaching audiences that are digital and social and streaming, and so they really want to hear a lot about very technical ad tech stuff. In fact, Fox even put a chief technology officer on stage, which I think is kind of different.
Don't people's eyes kind of glaze over? Did you see people looking at their phones, or were people engaged?
I think for the advertiser, they want that information that they need to reach consumers in different ways. They're under a lot of pressure from Coca-Cola and McDonald's and Nike, and they need to understand how do I get people who are watching TV in very different and very individual ways this time.
Brian, you have done so many good stories leading up to the big Upfront week. You've done stories about how advertisers are looking to measure car showroom visits following ads, like the measurements and the metrics and the ROI.
It's really changing a lot. It's not an era where people watch TV, except for sports. People aren't watching TV all together in one big group. They're watching it very individually. And so you need to kind of scoop them up. little by little. So you need technology to do that. You can't just put the ad on the air and hit everybody. You need to be very precise and reach your people and use algorithms and software and AI to do it. It's much more confusing and much more complex.
Of course, the upfronts are all about the show. So let's start with NBC first thing this morning. Stepping back, what was the message that NBC presented to Madison Avenue?
NBC really look, we've been around for a long time. You may be fascinated with all these new tech things, but you know us. We're proud of our legacy, and we have a lot of shows and a lot of experience and know it works. They really were, I thought, spotlighted their programming more than their technology and kind of play up their old school roots. They have a 100th anniversary coming up later this year, and they really took some pride in being around for such a long time.
All right, so let's move to the afternoon. Fox at New York City Center. What did Fox want to tell Madison Avenue today?
Lachlan Murdoch himself, though, this is rare. This has never happened in my many years of going. Lachlan got up and made a speech on stage at the Upfront, which is unusual, but underscores their seriousness in trying to work with people. And then they allow tech talk, which again for them is different, but they're a smaller company. I think wanted people to know they understood what advertisers are looking for. But to have Lachlan on stage, big deal for Fox.
I saw it seemed like Tubi really got a lot of stage time. What was your sense about how were they trying to position Tubi, their free AVOD streamer?
That was on. They talked about that before they talked about the broadcast network. So it definitely on their minds. They're seeing good traction for it. I think it's kind of carved out a kind of millennial niche with viewers, and they think it's going pretty well. So they were there to talk about how it works. The CEO came on board and got the spotlight before the Fox broadcast network did, which tells you something.
It does tell us something, and you told me that this was going to be the case 2 weeks ago. You wrote a story that said this year's Upfront is really not going to be about traditional TV so much as other platforms. Okay, so moving from Fox, heading north a little bit to the Beacon Theater. Brian, what was the message from Amazon Prime Video? They have had a lot of changes in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I thought these folks did a really good job of balancing tech and entertainment. They brought a lot of big stars on stage, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Michael B. Jordan, really kind of showcased not only sports, but also some ambitious stuff. They have a Muhammad Ali miniseries with the family involved. I thought they brought the show. They've been very aggressive about getting into the TV business, and they were not shy to that.
Anything really like new in that world, and anything that they were touting in terms of tapping into the Amazon and their vast resources from cloud computing to having their finger on the pulse of global consumers?
Yeah, one thing they've rolled out this year is an effort to try and tweak commercials. One of the main complaints about streaming ads that you see them again and again and again, and they cease to be effective after the second or third time you see them. It's the same thing. You just become immune to them. And what they've done here is they're giving people technology to help you tweak it, add graphics, add a different squeeze back or add a different feature to it. The basic creative stays the same, but you can change the message a little bit every time you see it. They're hoping that keeps it fresh for viewers, and it is one of the bigger problems in streaming right now.
Well, Brian, I'm sure you have had your fill of stats and hyperbole and high fives and celebrities. I hope you enjoy the Amazon after party, and you'll wake up early in the morning and do it all again.
Be here all week.
And now we turn to perspective from inside one of Hollywood's major studios. Liz Jenkins is Chief Business Officer for NBCUniversal Entertainment. It's her job to navigate the evolving monetization model for all of the big TV shows and movies produced under the NBCUniversal roof. Jenkins spoke with NPR's John Horn on May 6th in Denver as part of the Series Fest event. My thanks to Series Fest, Liz Jenkins, and John Horn for giving us these highlights.
I'd like to step back and talk a little bit about where the television and movie business is right now. I think we can say disruption is a mild way of putting it. Legacy networks, you have NBC, aren't exactly drawing the audiences they used to. Everybody has a streaming platform. You have Peacock. Netflix is growing by leaps and bounds. The theatrical movie business has never recovered from the pandemic. What does that mean to you, just in terms of how your job might have changed most dramatically over the last couple of years?
Well, you put it like that. There's a lot going on. I think one of my mantras is sort of like, if you think about disruption, and yes, the industry is massively disrupted right now. We've got lots and lots of headwinds that we're facing. But I really, truly believe like the other side of that coin is opportunity. Like, and if there's one thing you take away with you, it's that. right? And it's not just sort of about rose-colored glasses by any means, but you are seeing it today. You talk about the sale of Warner Brothers to Paramount. They're like once-in-a-generation shifts that are happening right now in our business. That's opportunity, right? And so I think what it means for sort of my role, sometimes like crazy cockamamie ideas I come up with or my team suggest, people are listening now, in a way they may not have done so before. But in all honesty, I think I'll start with film for a moment. Yes, in some ways, box office is down from where it was pre-pandemic. At the same time, we had Super Mario Brothers is on track to be the first film to pass $1 billion this year. There are incredible stories from Project Hail Mary to Michael and others that are Devil Wears Prada this past weekend. I think here's the thing, film, I like to think we've found our cruising altitude again. Yes, it's down, but we've built sustainable business models that allow us to continue making film. We have our distribution team, we've very innovative windowing that allows us to look and say, hey, we can underwrite films of different sizes for different audiences and do well kind of year after year. So I feel really good about that business and how it continues to power the overall flywheel for our company. And then I look at television, and you're right, the thing about television, when you think about it, since its inception, it's only gone one way, and it's gone up, right? We went from 3 networks to 4 networks to 5 to cable to streaming, and so it's sort of always like up and to the right. Sure, you'd have a shock every now and then if, in a strike year, but otherwise, technology innovation sort of favored kind of legacy TV production, that long-form medium. And now we live in a world where technology has sort of really disrupted. It's sort of like a baseball analogy, like you're pitching a no-hitter, and then suddenly you kind of like, wait a second, I got to do something different too. And I think that's the opportunity, right? We have, especially companies like ours, we've got this, our competitive advantage is our IP. It is this platform. It is this flywheel. So how do we think about not even really pivoting, but sort of like broadening the aperture to think differently about what we're putting out in the world, who we're making it with, where we're putting it, all of that.
How do you overcome the fear of failure and take on risk? Because so much in the business is angled toward punishing those people who fail and only rewarding those who succeed. And sometimes, like I think Oppenheimer would be a great example. You have to roll the dice to succeed.
Yeah, and I think honestly, there's nothing more lethal than that mindset. And I do think it is increasingly, I see it sometimes gripping our industry, which you understand why, right? And that, to me, we can't, if you're playing not to lose, you're not going to be winning, frankly. And I understand why. It makes sense to have like a scarcity mindset when it feels like, the pool is shrinking, the volume of series are going down, but you're not going to, that's not where innovation is going to come from, right? That's not where growth, that's not where really dynamic stories are born. And so I think, how do you avoid it? Donna talks a lot about having a growth mindset, and that is the expectation of people at our company, right? And so, yes, you take bets, but we make smart, well-informed bets. I talk a lot of data-informed decision-making. It's not data-driven, because data's never going to predict a hit. That's impossible. By definition, a hit is something that significantly outperforms what something was expected to do. But I think data, along with a lot of other important data points, can be a part of making a multifaceted decision around something. So, I think we will roll the dice and things will, but that to me almost minimizes kind of the rigor, the thoughtfulness, the degree of intention that goes on kind of behind the scenes that leads us to that.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. The embargoes for Wednesday morning are already piling up like planes at LaGuardia. There will be a lot of upfront news coming out at the crack of dawn. Watch Variety.com for all the headlines. Don't miss my colleague Chris Willman's interview with Sir Rod Stewart. The two spoke in advance of the TV special Forever Young, a Grammy salute to Rod Stewart. that airs May 19th on CBS and Paramount+. And definitely don't miss my colleague Todd Spangler's write-up on Netflix's big data dump this morning. The Netflix Effect is a large report released Tuesday morning that documents how the streamer has spent some $135 billion on global content over the last 10 years. Netflix did the math and asserts that all of this has added up to some $325 billion in contributions to the global economy. We know for a fact that many higher-ups at Netflix were very upset earlier this year during their fight to acquire Warner Brothers that no one in town stood up for them for being the innovator that has changed the industry, not to mention writing some big checks to the creative community over the past decade. Spangler's analysis of Netflix's analysis is a fascinating read. We love to hear from our listeners, so please send thoughts, gripes, and other feedback about Daily Variety to podcasts@variety.com. Before we go, congrats to Kiana Martin. She's joined ESPN's SportsCenter as an anchor. Martin comes to SportsCenter after spending the past few years at CBS Sports. Earlier in her career, she hosted sports-related content for True TV and MSG Networks, and she was also a senior reporter for the San Francisco 49ers. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Brian Steinberg. Sticks, Nicks, Hick Picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.